2 years. Every morning, every bath, every meal, every bedtime, Lily had never laughed. Not once in 2 years. Not a smile. Not a giggle. Not a single moment of joy that her mother could point to and say, "There, she felt that." Then the dog fell over, and Lily laughed, and Seren sat on the kitchen floor and didn't move for a long time. This is that story. Lily was born on a Thursday in March. She arrived without complication, full term, good weight. The standard reassurances of a birth that had gone as expected. She came home on the Saturday. She settled into the house with the specific consuming presence of a newborn who does not yet know she is a person and is in the process of becoming one. The milestones arrived mostly on schedule. She held her head up. She tracked movement. She reached for things. She fed well. Slept in the fragmented way of infants. Grew in the steady incremental way that health visitor charts recorded and approved. She did not smile. Not at 6 weeks when the social smile was expected. Not at 8 weeks. Not at 3 months when Seren had read that it would certainly be there by now. Not at 6 months or 9 months or 12. The health visitor had noted it. The GP had referred. The developmental pediatrician had assessed. There had been tests and observations and the careful accumulating language of professionals trying to describe an absence. Global developmental delay, atypical social emotional responsiveness, presentation inconsistent with standard developmental trajectory. In plain language, Lily did not respond to the world with joy. She was not unhappy. She was not in pain. She was present, attentive, engaged with her environment in the specific, careful way of a child who is processing everything and expressing nothing. Seren had been told this at every appointment. She had nodded at every appointment. She had driven home from every appointment and sat in the car in the driveway for a few minutes before going inside. 2 years of appointments, 2 years of nodding, 2 years of every morning and every bath and every meal and every bedtime and the specific sustained effort of loving someone with everything you have and not knowing, never knowing if any of it was landing. Cove was 4 years old. A Springer Spaniel, her husband Daniel's dog from before they married, brown and white, energetic in the specific joyful, uncontained way of the breed. A dog who approached every moment of his day as if it were the best moment so far. He was in the kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon in October. He was chasing something, his own enthusiasm, probably the specific internal momentum of a Springer Spaniel who has decided that now is the time for movement. And he miscalculated the turn by the kitchen island and went sideways and sat down suddenly with the expression of a dog who has surprised himself. Lily was in her high chair. She looked at Cove. She laughed. Not a small sound. Not an ambiguous sound that could be interpreted as laughter if you wanted it to be. A laugh, full, genuine. The specific delighted sound of a child who has found something funny and is telling the room about it. Seren was at the counter. She turned. She looked at her daughter. She looked at Cove, who was still sitting on the kitchen floor looking mildly affronted. She looked at Lily, who was still laughing. She sat down on the kitchen floor. She did not move for a long time, not because she was unable to, because she needed a moment. 2 years, every morning. The dog fell over, and Lily laughed. 2 years of developmental assessments. 2 years of atypical social, emotional responsiveness. 2 years of a mother doing everything right and getting nothing back. And a Springer Spaniel going sideways on a kitchen floor on a Tuesday afternoon. And a 2 year old laughing for the first time in her life. Subscribe now if you haven't already. Ring the bell. Because what Cove did that afternoon has a scientific explanation. And that explanation is beginning to change how developmental delay therapy thinks about animal-mediated emotional engagement. Before we go on, has an animal ever reached a child in a way that nothing else could? Not therapy, not intervention, just an animal being itself in the right room at the right moment. Tell us in the comments. Because Seren's therapist is about to hear this story, and she is going to be careful and professional and resistant to making claims the evidence doesn't support, and she is going to be wrong to resist. Now, back to Seren, who is still on the kitchen floor, and who is about to call Daniel. Seren and Daniel and Lily and Cove are characters we created. The global developmental delay, the 2 years without a smile, the Tuesday afternoon, these events are fictional, but the science underneath them is real and growing. The documented capacity of animals to elicit genuine effect in children with a typical social, emotional development, including children on the autism spectrum, children with global developmental delay, and children with trauma-related emotional suppression, is supported by a significant and growing body of research. The specific mechanism by which animal behavior bypasses the processing differences that inhibit typical social, emotional response is an active area of investigation. We made these characters so the truth underneath them could be told as fully as possible. Seren had grown up in a small town in Ohio. She was the daughter of a librarian and a high school football coach, a combination that had produced in her a specific hybrid of quiet internal richness and practical external capability that she had not fully recognized as unusual until she left for college and discovered that not everyone moved through the world this way. She had studied occupational therapy, had worked in pediatric rehabilitation for 4 years before Lily, had spent those 4 years helping children build the functional capacities that injury or condition had disrupted, the specific patient, incremental, evidence-based work of a profession that understood that progress was slow and real and worth every small step. She had thought this would prepare her for Lily. It had prepared her for the appointments, for the language of the assessments, for the professional conversations about developmental trajectories and intervention strategies and realistic expectations. It had not prepared her for the feeling. The feeling was something she had not found in any professional framework she had been trained in. It was the specific experience of being a mother to a child who could not yet show her she was loved, who was not withholding, who was not refusing, who simply did not yet have the capacity for the reciprocal emotional exchange that Seren had not known until it was absent. How much she had been anticipating. She had a therapist. Her name was Dr. Michelle Park, a clinical psychologist who specialized in parental adjustment to childhood disability and developmental difference. A woman of precise and genuine compassion who had been working with Seren for 18 months. Dr. Park had given her language for the feeling. She had called it ambiguous loss, the grief of a relationship that existed but was not yet fully available, the mourning of a connection that was real and present and not yet reciprocal. The language had helped. It had not resolved the feeling. Daniel was an architect. He was 34. Steady in the specific way of a person who processes difficulty internally and thoroughly before showing any of it, who had been beside Seren through 2 years of appointments and assessments with the quiet, consistent presence of a man who had decided that showing up was the thing he could control and was controlling it. He had Cove before Seren. Cove had been his dog through graduate school and his first job, and the first apartment, and the meeting of Seren, and the falling in love, and the marriage. He was not a trained therapy animal. He was not a calm, considered, professionally assessed support dog. He was a Springer Spaniel who had an excess of feeling about everything and expressed it continuously and without apology. Lily had been around Cove her entire life. She had not, in 2 years, laughed at him. She had not laughed at anything. Until Tuesday. Daniel came home at 6:15. Seren was at the kitchen table. Lily was on the floor with Cove, not interacting with him, not playing, but proximate to him in the way she sometimes was. The specific close, but separate presence of a child who tolerates nearness without seeking it. Daniel looked at Seren's face. He had learned, in 2 years, to read Seren's face with a precision that the 2 years had produced. "What happened?" he said. Seren told him. She told him about the kitchen island, and Cove going sideways, and the expression on the dog's face, and Lily in the high chair. She told him about the laugh. Daniel sat down. He looked at Cove. Cove looked back with the mild, affable expression of a dog who has largely forgotten the afternoon's incident and has moved on to the current moment. "She laughed," Daniel said. "She laughed," Seren said. They looked at each other. They looked at Lily, who was examining a block with the focused interest of a child who finds objects more straightforward than people. "Why need to tell Dr. Park?" Daniel said. "I know," Seren said. She paused. "I want to see if it happens again first," she said. "I want to be sure." It happened again on Thursday. Cove sneezed, a large, sudden, full-body sneeze that surprised him as much as anyone, and Lily, who had been on the play mat 3 feet away, looked up and laughed, the same laugh. Full, genuine, directed at the dog. Seren had her phone out this time. She filmed it. She called Dr. Park from the driveway. She said, "I need to show you something." Dr. Park watched the video in her office the following Monday. She watched it twice. She was quiet for a long moment. "Tell me about the dog," she said. "Specifically, what is he doing when this happens?" "Something unexpected," Seren said. "Something physical. Something that surprises him as much as her." Dr. Park made a note. "I want to refer you to someone," she said. "A colleague. She works in animal-assisted intervention research. I want her to see the video." Seren looked at her. "You think the dog is doing something?" Seren said. "I think," Dr. Park said carefully, "that something is happening that I want to understand better before I say anything more specific." She paused. "But yes," she said, "I think the dog is doing something." Dr. Josephine Okafor had been researching animal-assisted intervention in developmental delay for 11 years. She was not a clinician. She was a researcher, a woman whose specific contribution to the field was the mechanism work, the documentation of what was actually happening physiologically and neurologically when animal contact produced the outcomes that practitioners observed. She had watched the video 3 times before she called Dr. Park. She had then driven to Seren and Daniel's house on a Saturday morning with a colleague and a camera and a set of observational protocols that she had developed over 11 years for exactly this kind of situation. She had spent 4 hours watching Lily with Cove. At the end of the 4 hours, she had sat with Seren and Daniel at the kitchen table. "Tell me what you know about Lily's sensory processing," she said. Seren told her the assessments, the observations, the specific profile of a child who processed sensory information differently, who was sometimes overwhelmed by human faces and voices and the complex emotional demands of human interaction. Dr. Okafor nodded. Human social interaction, she said, is extraordinarily complex. A face alone contains hundreds of simultaneous signals, expression, micro-expression, eye direction, muscle tension, the emotional demands of reciprocity. For a child whose processing is atypical, that complexity can be overwhelming. The system shuts down rather than engages. Seren nodded. An animal, Dr. Okafor continued, is different. A dog's expressiveness is simpler. It is readable, physical, whole body, without the micro-complexity of a human face. It does not demand reciprocity. It does not carry emotional expectation. It simply acts. She paused. And when a dog does something unexpected, something physical, something surprising, something that is funny in the most basic possible way, the emotional response it triggers does not have to pass through the same processing filters that human social interaction does. It goes somewhere else, somewhere more direct. She laughed before she could decide not to. Seren said. Dr. Okafor looked at her. That, she said, is the most precise description of affect elicitation I have heard a parent give. She explained the mechanism in the language the research used: animal-mediated affect elicitation. The specific pathway by which unexpected animal behavior triggered genuine emotional response in children with a typical social, emotional processing. The absence of social demand, the simplicity of the stimulus, the physical, whole body, unambiguous nature of a dog falling over or sneezing or being surprised by its own momentum. It bypassed the complexity. It found the laugh before the processing could intercept it. What does this mean for Lily? Daniel said. It means, Dr. Okafor said, that she has a pathway, that the capacity for joy is there. We have it on video twice now. The question is how we use what we know to open that pathway more consistently. She looked at Cove, who was asleep in the corner. The dog, she said, is already doing it. We need to understand it well enough to support it. We want to stop here, because what Dr. Okafor just said, she laughed before she could decide not to, is the most important sentence in this story. 2 years of appointments, 2 years of assessments and interventions and recommended activities, 2 years of everything right, and a Springer Spaniel going sideways on a kitchen floor found something that none of it had found. Not because the therapy was wrong, because the dog was simpler. No emotional demand, no reciprocity required, no complex human face full of hope and expectation and love. That was, for Lily's processing system, too much to meet. Just a dog being a dog, falling over, being surprised by itself, and Lily laughing before she could decide not to. Tell us in the comments, has an animal ever reached your child when nothing else could? Not a therapy program, not an intervention, just an animal in the room being itself. Tell us, because Dr. Park is about to do something she has never done in 15 years of practice. She is about to write Cove into Lily's treatment plan. Dr. Park's resistance was professional and appropriate. She had read Dr. Okafor's preliminary observations. She had watched the videos, all 6 of them now, because Seren had been filming every Cove and Lily interaction since the Thursday sneeze and had accumulated a record of 11 laugh responses across 9 days. 11. In 2 years of assessment, Lily's file contained 0 documented spontaneous joy responses. In 9 days of filming, she had 11 Dr. Park had looked at the videos with the careful attention of a clinician who needed to be certain she was seeing what she thought she was seeing before she acted on it. She was seeing what she thought she was seeing. Her resistance was not about the evidence. It was about the claim. I don't want to tell this family that their dog is the answer, she told Dr. Okafor, because if we build a treatment framework around the dog and it stops working, if Lily habituates to Cove's behavior and the responses reduce, we have given them something and taken it away. We're not telling them the dog is the answer, Dr. Okafor said. We're telling them the dog has shown us a pathway. The question is what we do with the pathway, which is, we document it. We understand the stimulus properties, the unexpectedness, the physical comedy, the absence of social demand, and we use those properties to design a broader intervention, one that can be delivered by the dog, by trained animals, by other unexpected physical stimuli that share the same characteristics. Dr. Park read the observations again. She thought about Seren on the kitchen floor. She thought about 2 years of ambiguous loss and a Tuesday afternoon and a dog going sideways. Write the protocol, she said. I'll co-sign it. She paused. And Dr. Okafor, make sure Cove is in the room for the first formal session. I want to see it myself. She saw it herself. Cove, introduced to the session room, investigated the corners with the thoroughness of a Springer Spaniel encountering a new space, attempted to climb onto a chair that was clearly not built for dogs, reconsidered, and sat down with an expression of mild philosophical resignation. Lily watched the whole sequence. At the chair moment, she laughed. Dr. Park wrote in her session notes, spontaneous, genuine, sustained laugh response. Duration approximately 4 seconds. Directed at animal stimulus. No prompting. No social demand. She underlined the last 3 words. No social demand. That was the thing. That had always been the thing. Dr. Okafor's paper was published 10 months after the Tuesday afternoon. It was co-authored with Dr. Park and with a developmental pediatrician named Dr. Samuel Reeves, who had been Lily's lead clinician since the diagnosis and who had, when presented with 11 videos of a laugh response that his 2 years of assessment had not produced, said, I need to be part of this. The paper was titled Animal Mediated Affect Elicitation in Children with Atypical Social, Emotional Development. A documented case study of spontaneous joy response through unexpected canine behavior. It described the mechanism with the precision the research required, the absence of social demand, the physical simplicity of the stimulus, the specific pathway by which unexpected animal behavior bypassed the processing complexity that inhibited typical social, emotional response in children with developmental delay. It described Cove, not by name in the paper, by breed, age, behavior profile. But Seren knew it was him on every page. The paper was cited 14 times in the first 8 months. 3 animal-assisted intervention programs had contacted Dr. Okafor about incorporating the affect elicitation protocol into their practice. Dr. Park had presented at a conference for clinical psychologists working with developmental delay. She had shown the videos. The room had been very quiet. Then someone had started clapping. Lily was 3 years old when the paper was published. She was not a typically developing 3-year-old. She would not be. The delay was real. The difference was real. The life she was building was being built at her own pace in her own way, and the pace and the way were hers. But she was laughing, not only at Cove, though Cove remained her most reliable source of delight. The dog whose physical comedy she had not yet exhausted and showed no signs of exhausting. At other things too. At Daniel making a face. At a video of a cat on Seren's phone. At the specific visual joke of a ball rolling under a table. The pathway that Cove had found was being used now by other things. That was what pathways were for. Seren watched Lily and Cove in the backyard on a Saturday morning in spring. Cove was doing what Cove always did, moving through the world with the specific full body enthusiasm of a dog for whom every moment contained something worth investigating. He had found something in the flower bed. He was investigating it with his whole face. Lily was watching him. Her face had an expression on it that Seren had spent 2 years waiting to see. Not the laugh yet. The thing before the laugh. The building of it. The specific delight of a child watching something funny approach its conclusion. Cove emerged from the flower bed with a leaf on his nose. Lily laughed. Seren sat on the back step and watched her daughter laugh at the dog with the leaf on his nose, and felt the specific quality of a moment that was both ordinary and the thing she had waited 2 years for simultaneously. She thought about the kitchen floor, about sitting on the kitchen floor and not moving for a long time. She thought that was the day. She thought that was the day everything started. She thought the dog fell over. She thought, and Lily laughed. She thought, and nothing was ever the same again. Cove shook the leaf off his nose. Lily laughed again. Seren looked at the dog. "Good boy," she said. Cove looked at her. His tail moved. He went back to the flower bed. His work, as far as he was concerned, was ongoing. It always had been. He just hadn't known it was work. 2 years. Every morning, every bath, every meal, every bedtime. Lily had never laughed. Not once. Not a smile, not a giggle, not a single moment of joy that her mother could point to and say, "There." She felt that. Then the dog fell over, and Lily laughed. And a pathway opened that 2 years of careful clinical intervention had not found. Not because the intervention was wrong, because the dog was simpler, no emotional demand, no reciprocity required. Just a Springer Spaniel being surprised by its own momentum on a Tuesday afternoon, and a 2-year-old laughing before she could decide not to. Share this video today. Share it with every parent who has been doing everything right and getting nothing back. With every developmental therapist who has been looking for the next tool. With every family that has a dog and a child with developmental delay in the same house and has never thought to look at what might already be happening between them. Because Dr. Park wrote Cove into the treatment plan, and 3 intervention programs changed their practice, and a paper exists now that did not exist before a Springer Spaniel went sideways on a kitchen floor. Subscribe if you are new here. We are back every week. Ring the bell. And our final question: what has made your child laugh when nothing else could? Not a therapy session. Not a recommended activity, something unexpected. Something simple. Something that arrived sideways. Tell us in the comments. Because Cove didn't know he was doing anything. He fell over, and Lily laughed. And that was the beginning of everything.